Have you ever walked into someone's home and noticed that it was always clean? Not because guests were coming over, not because they had spent all Sunday cleaning, just consistently clean. And maybe part of you has wondered how they do that. Not once in a while, not when things get bad, but all the time. Most people look at that and think discipline. But that is not always what is happening. For some people, a messy space is harder to live with than it looks. It sits in the mind, it pulls at their attention, it keeps something in them from fully settling. So this is not really a video about cleaning. It is about why disorder feels expensive to some people. And if a cluttered room can make you feel tired before the day has even started, this may explain why. Your brain does not separate your inner world from your outer world as cleanly as you think it does. The space you live in is constantly sending signals to your mind. In psychology, there is a term for part of this: cognitive load. It simply means the amount of mental effort your brain is carrying at any given moment. And here is what matters. Clutter adds to that load. Not just the big obvious mess, the small things too. The unopened Amazon boxes by the door, the mail and bills on the kitchen counter, the laundry chair that slowly turns into a second closet, the dishes from a rushed Tuesday dinner still sitting in the sink the next morning. Your brain reads all of that as unfinished. And unfinished things are mentally expensive. Research out of Princeton found that physical clutter competes for your attention. It makes it harder for the brain to focus because too many things are asking to be noticed at once. In simple terms, the visual cortex gets busier. The mind gets less clear. So the room is not just annoying to look at. It is quietly making it harder to think, harder to settle, and harder to relax. That is why some people feel tense in a messy room even when nothing dramatic is happening. Their brain is still working, still scanning, still registering. Your brain is not ignoring the mess. It is tracking it. So when a cluttered room makes you feel uneasy for no obvious reason, that is not weakness. Your brain is still processing what your eyes keep seeing. And once you understand that, something deeper starts to make sense, because people who keep their house clean every day are usually not responding to aesthetics alone. They are responding to how disorder feels. Think about how much of life is outside your control. Traffic on the freeway, a packed inbox, bills that keep showing up, bad headlines, weekend errands stacking up, other people's moods, a meeting that goes sideways, a text that never comes. So much of adult life has this low-grade unpredictability built into it. And for a lot of people, that unpredictability does not come as one big crisis. It comes as background noise, a kind of low, steady mental pressure. But home is different. Home is one of the few places that can still respond to you. You can clear the counter. You can make the bed. You can wipe down the bathroom sink. You can load the dishwasher before going to sleep. You can walk into the kitchen after work and either feel the room fighting you or feel it working with you. That difference matters more than people realize. In psychology, this connects to what is called internal locus of control. That means the sense that your actions still affect your experience, that you are not powerless, that something is still in your hands. And every time you bring order back to your space, even in a small way, you reinforce that feeling. You are not just cleaning your house. You are reminding your brain that something is still in your hands, and that is part of why it feels relieving. For some people, it is not that they love order. It is that they do not fully relax without it. What looks small on the outside can feel expensive on the inside. A clear kitchen is not just a clear kitchen. Sometimes it is the difference between walking into your home and exhaling, or walking into it and feeling like the day is still on top of you. Now, this is where people often get the wrong impression. They assume the person with the consistently clean house is simply more disciplined, more responsible, better at forcing themselves to do things they do not want to do. But that is not the deepest explanation, because after a while, this stops being about effort. It becomes identity. Very few people genuinely enjoy vacuuming every day or scrubbing surfaces for fun. That is not really the point. The point is that repeated actions begin to change the way you see yourself. In behavioral psychology, actions are not just things you do. They become evidence, and that evidence slowly updates your self-concept. If you wipe down the kitchen island every night, load the dishwasher before bed, and make the bed before you check your phone in the morning, your brain starts to register a pattern. Not perfection, pattern. And from that pattern comes identity. This is where cognitive dissonance matters. Your mind wants your behavior and your self-image to match. So if you keep showing up as someone who resets their space, your brain becomes less willing to hold on to the old story that says, "I'm just messy," or "I'm just not that kind of person." Identity is built through evidence. That is why the shift that matters most is not from messy to clean. It is from "I should clean" to "I'm the kind of person who resets my space." Once that shift begins, the behavior feels less like a chore and more like something that fits you. You stop waiting to feel motivated. You start acting like someone who already lives that way. And this becomes even more powerful in the part of the day when your brain is easiest to shape. In the morning, your brain is more receptive than it is later on. Part of that is biological. Your cortisol naturally rises after waking, helping you become alert and ready to engage. And in that early window, repeated actions tend to sink in more deeply. The brain is simply more ready to be trained by what you do first. So when you make the bed before coffee, wipe the counter while the coffee brews, or come downstairs to a clear sink instead of last night's dishes, that is not a meaningless little habit. It is a signal. Because every completed action creates what psychologists sometimes call a completion loop. You finish something, you see that it is done, and your brain gets a small reward for that, a little dopamine, a little closure, a little evidence that the day is already moving in the right direction. The first completed action of your day quietly tells your brain, "We're moving." That is why small order in the morning can change the feel of the whole day. Not because it turns you into a productivity machine, but because it gives your mind one less loose end to carry, which also explains why the opposite can feel heavier than people realize. Because when people say, "I'm just messy," that is usually not the whole story. Sometimes the mess does reflect what is happening inside. Depression can do that, burnout can do that, grief can do that, so can long periods of stress and depletion. When a person is emotionally worn down, their environment is often one of the first things to slip. But clutter is not just a reflection. It can also become part of the strain. Once a space fills up with unfinished things, the brain keeps registering them. The room stops being neutral. It starts asking for attention. And that means the very place that is supposed to help you recover can quietly keep you activated instead. A messy space doesn't just look unfinished, it feels unfinished. That is the part people often miss. You come home at the end of the day wanting to exhale, but instead your shoulders tighten a little. Your eyes start scanning before you even take your shoes off. The counter, the chair, the floor, the bag you never unpacked. Nothing may be especially terrible, but nothing in the room is telling your mind that it can fully stand down. You come home to rest, but your brain doesn't get the signal that it's safe to. And that has real psychological weight. Research has found that people who describe their homes as cluttered or full of unfinished projects tend to have higher cortisol levels across the day than people who describe their homes as more restful and restorative. In other words, your space may be affecting your stress level more than you think. And that does not make you dramatic. It means your environment is affecting you more than you were taught to admit. Some minds are not fragile. They are just more taxed by friction. Now, there is one misunderstanding I want to clear up before we go further, because a lot of people hear something like this and immediately say, "So clean people are OCD." Not necessarily. Liking order is not the same thing as OCD. OCD involves intrusive thoughts, real distress, and compulsive behavior that a person feels driven to perform. That is very different from feeling calmer in a clean room, wanting structure, or using routine to support your mental state. Clean habits can come from many places: comfort, sensory relief, self-regulation, a need for structure, a desire to make the environment easier to live in. There is a difference between being controlled by cleaning and using order to steady yourself. That difference matters, because otherwise people end up pathologizing something that may simply be helping another person function better. And this is where most people use the wrong word. When they see someone with a consistently clean home, they call it discipline. But that is not always the best explanation, because discipline depends on effort, and effort runs out. You can force yourself for a while. Most people can. But that is not the same as having a habit that truly holds. What you are often seeing is automation. Repeated behavior becomes less negotiated over time. The brain stops treating it like a fresh argument every single day. That is why habit research matters. Not because there is some magical number, but because repetition changes how a behavior feels. One widely cited study found that, on average, it takes around 66 days for a new behavior to become more automatic. That is the real goal. Not force forever. Repeat until it stops feeling like a debate. You're not watching discipline. You're watching a pattern that stopped negotiating. And once your brain stops arguing with the task stops feeling heavy. And once your brain stops arguing with the task stops feeling heavy. And that helps explain something a lot of people have experienced without fully understanding it, why cleaning can feel so relieving when you are stressed. Sometimes the relief is not about the room, it is about what the action is doing to your state. In psychology, there is a term for this: behavioral activation. The idea is simple. When anxious energy has nowhere to go, it tends to stay in the body and in the mind. But movement gives it somewhere to go. And when that movement creates visible progress, the effect is even stronger. You are not just moving, you are moving toward order. That is why so many people start wiping things down, folding clothes, or putting things back when they feel overwhelmed. Not because they suddenly care more about appearances, because action helps discharge tension. The body gets to do something, the mind gets to see something change, and then the second layer kicks in. A clean room creates visual relief. Less noise, less friction, less unfinished business pulling at your attention. Order can function like a safety cue, especially for people who are sensitive, overstimulated, or mentally tired. That matters more than it seems. Sometimes you are not cleaning your house, you are settling your nervous system. What looks like tidiness from the outside can feel like recovery from the inside. That is why an end-of-day reset can be so powerful. Not because it makes the house look impressive, but because it creates a boundary. You reset the kitchen after dinner. You put the living room back before bed. And the next morning, the space is not handing yesterday back to you. You wake up to a clear counter, a calmer visual field, and one less thing pressing on your mind before the day has even begun. So if you want to begin changing this, begin smaller than your guilt wants to begin. Do not wait until everything is out of control. Catch it early. Catch it while it is still light. Pick one space. Reset it before the mess grows teeth. Tie it to something that already happens every day. After dinner, reset the counter. Before bed, clear the chair. While the coffee brews, wipe the sink. Keep it small enough that your brain does not resist it. And make it easier to return to. Put on music. Let the routine feel familiar. Let it become something your body recognizes, not something your mind dreads. Because in the end, your home is not just where you live. It is where your mind goes to check if the day is over. And maybe this was never just about cleaning. Maybe it was about building a place your mind can actually rest in. Not because a clean house makes you better than anyone else. Not because order is a moral achievement. But because for some people, taking care of their space is one of the most honest ways they know how to take care of themselves. For the next 7 days, pick one space and keep one promise to yourself inside it. Just one. A counter, a sink, a nightstand, a chair, something small enough that you can actually hold. Then pay attention to what changes. Not just in the room, but in your body, in your evenings, in the way you walk into that space. And if this touched something deeper in you, you are exactly who Psyche-Life is for. This channel is for people who want to understand themselves more clearly and with less shame. So if that is you, subscribe, stay close, and keep walking with us. It is not a flaw, it is a function. And if this idea stayed with you, then the next video should be about why some people only feel truly calm at home. Because for some people, the real story was never cleaning. It was why their nervous system never fully lands.